Your 20s were never the decade that you were meant to sort of build wealth in. The decade that actually does it is the one that you're probably standing in right now. And it runs on something a 22-year-old simply doesn't have. So first, look, let me get all the guilt out of the way first, because I honestly think it's probably holding a lot of you back. Look, I bet you have seen the chart every other finance channel loves to wave about, right? Invest 200 quid a month from 20 and then stop at 30, completely stop, and you retire richer than some poor soul who started at 30 and then paid painfully for the next 30 years. And look, the maths of that is real. I'm not disputing it, but it's kind of used like this weird stick to beat you with. And it quietly assumes that a life that you have that no one really your age or in their 20s was actually living. Let's think about your 20s for a minute. Actually genuinely think about it. You come out of what? You went into the workforce on an entry-level job with entry-level money. And frankly, a significantly rude chunk of that was vanishing to like rent straight away. And then you were moving cities for a job or switching careers because the first one turned out to be not the right one for you, scraping a deposit together for a property, just trying to buy clothes that made you look like you belonged in the rooms that you should have been at work. That is not a failure to build wealth. That's the cost of building a life. And even when you did try, even when you did throw 20 quid a month into some trendy app, life comes along, doesn't it? And you pulled it straight back out. The car needed brakes. The flat needed moving. That chart only works if you can leave the money untouched for like 40 years in exactly the right place, might I add. And almost nobody, let alone in their 20s, actually can. So if you've been carrying that guilt around, put it down once and for all. It was never yours to carry in the first place. Because here's where it starts flipping in your favor. Because yes, obviously, a 22-year-old has that beautiful 40-year runway. But if all they can scrape together is 50 quid a month in that period of time before then, the engine's running on fumes. You, at 35 or 45, are a completely different animal entirely. You've got like skills people are going to pay a lot of money for. Your life stopped lurching around. You're not packing up and moving house every 18 months. And that means that you can finally do the one thing that genuinely builds wealth, which is put in serious money, serious contribution velocity, the fuel to the engine consistently. And this is the part that almost everybody gets backwards. You don't get rich by being some savant stock picker, by picking the next big thing. You get rich by earning well and firing that spare income into the market like ammunition. The income is the fuel, it's everything. The investment markets, they're just the engine. Somebody injecting £1,000 or £2,000 a month in their late 30s will sail past a decade of like 50 quid contributions here and there in speculative stocks. It's not even close. But, and this is the bit that catches kind of everyone off guard in this country, you're not starting at the start line, I'm afraid. You're starting 50 meters behind it. Do you want to know why? Because of tax. Look, if you earn over about £50,000 in this country, you are going into the higher rate of tax threshold. That's 40% tax. Also, add on top of that national insurance, that's a separate slice taken out for things like the state pension and the NHS. And above that line of that £50,000 roughly, you are keeping less than 60p in every extra pound you earn. Crazy. And God forbid you make it to the 100 grand level and that 125 bracket. This is this absolutely brutal zone. This is just almost comically ridiculous. In this zone, your personal allowance, that's the first chunk of income that you would normally pay 0% income tax on, that first £12,570 starts getting stripped away. People call it the 60% tax trap. Now, fold in a student loan or losing your child benefit on top of that, and your real rate of return on that money can tip over 70%. Just actually stop and think about that for a minute. 70%. So trying to build wealth out of what's left of that, money that's already been taxed to the bone, is like kind of running a marathon with one of those parachute things strapped to your back. You can do it, but my God, you're making it hard for yourself. It's just ridiculous. So here's how you drag that start line back to actually where it belongs, the start of your journey. Your route to wealth building is money into a pension before the tax man ever lays a finger on it. Now, you do this either via salary sacrifice, which is where you agree to take slightly less pay in your pocket each month, but your employer pipes that money straight into your pension, basically free of tax instead. Or if you're not in that scenario, maybe through something like a SIP or a personal pension. And a SIP, again, is just a different type of personal pension. It's a pension that you kind of run yourself. And the effect of doing that is honestly mad. So for a high rate taxpayer, that 60% that you would have been left with goes back to being a full pound. It never got taxed in the first place. You earned a pound, it went straight back in. So theoretically, that is an instant 60% uplift on your money. Risk-free, by the way, before the market or any other investment has done a single thing for you. Now, I already know what you're screaming at me down the lens. I already know. I understand the reflex the second that I say the word pension. I don't want to be locked away until I'm old. Okay, yeah, look, I kind of felt exactly the same, to be honest with you. But look at your life timeline honestly. If you're pushing 40, the minimum pension age, the age that you can access a pension, is basically 57 now. It's currently 55. It will be 57. So for this purposes, we'll just call it 57. Now, that's not some far off imaginary planet that's in the horizon. That's something that you can genuinely see, isn't it? 57. That money isn't gone. It's just parked somewhere that your kind of Saturday afternoon spending can't get at. Now, something that I keep seeing time and time again in my one-to-one sessions with people is that there is something about feeling like you've wasted your 20s that breeds this desperate hunger for safety. I'm doing this very video because this is what I've noticed recently from my discussions. So what people will do is they'll spot a savings account paying like 5% and think, perfect, I'll just pile it all in there where nothing bad can happen. I don't want to lose what I've started to gain. Again, I see it absolutely constantly. By the way, links in the description below if you want to work with me. But anyway, this whole thing, this notion, is quietly the most expensive instinct that there is, because here's what safe actually costs you. So let's say inflation is running at 3%, right? And your account is paying you 3% interest. Your real return, the real growth on your money is zero, isn't it? Not a small gain, nothing. You haven't actually grown a single penny of spending power or wealth. You've just stockpiled it all up. You've basically watched it get robbed very slowly and very politely in a way that never once shows up on some red digits as a loss on your screen. To build real wealth, the truth is that your money has to take some genuine risk, okay? It's not easy. But risk doesn't mean gambling on crypto or trying to pick the next Nvidia. Whatever people tell you, that's not the way. Trying to guess which way the FTSE will be on next Tuesday. What it actually means is matching your money to maximize it as much as you can to the time that you have for that money. Now, that is the whole game, genuinely. Now, The rule that I use is blunt, but I do not bend it. 5 years. If you need to access the majority of that money within 5 years, so a house deposit, school fees, new car, that stays in cash. Full stop, okay? Because ultimately you can't take risks in the market because you don't have long enough for that to play out. And inflation doesn't have a hugely significant impact in less than 5 years. But over 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, it belongs in assets that are working for you. For that longer money, you don't need some clever tangle of like 40 different funds or picking a load of stocks or anything else like that. You just need one broad, cheap, global investment fund. Now, the one that most people have heard of, the most popular ones out there, are the Vanguard Life Strategy range. These are what we call multi-asset funds. So they're just a mix of all different types of assets put together. So stocks and bonds, bit of property, cash, all that sort of stuff. This is just each one of these funds is just a single pot that spreads your money across a tiny slice of thousands of the world's biggest companies at once, with some bonds mixed in there as well and other different asset classes. Bonds, again, being essentially just loans to companies and governments that pay you back a slower, steadier rate of return. Now, each one of these Vanguard funds is labeled by the split that it has. So Vanguard Life Strategy 100 is all in the stock market. It's all in shares. So it's a roller coaster, right? A proper crash could drop by 30%, 50%, and you have to be able to sit and watch that without flinching, okay? Not for the faint-hearted, but look at the rewards you get. Over the long run, these sorts of types of funds will historically return around 8% a year. So it's all a trade-off, regardless of what you do. Then, for example, let's have a look a little bit more detail at the Life Strategy 60. So that is 60% shares, 40% bonds and other, where those bonds in the portfolio act as a shock absorber, right? A shock absorber, easy for me to say. So when the market lurches around and pivots, this LS60 will not fall as hard as LS100. I mean, I wish it was as straight as that line, the Life Strategy 60, but you get the point, right? It just doesn't fall as hard, but the trade-off is that you give up a bit of long-term return for a much smoother ride. And the more cautious ones, less than 60, they tip further into having a higher bond allocation. Again, these are for money that you'll need sooner or you can't afford to see nosedive. So let me put the whole thing together the way it actually should and often does play out. So say you are 38 and you've got two completely different things that you're kind of saving for. There's a big family holiday that you want to take in about 6 years. And then there's your retirement, right? 20 odd years away. Those two pots should not and do not get treated the same. This is this drives me crazy. This is my absolute biggest bugbear with investment content online. I see it everywhere with people that I speak to in one-to-ones who have watched any content online, and it's just all over YouTube, okay? People assume when it comes to investing your money, it's either cash or you invest in the stock market. So people will conflate the notion of investing equals stock market. That couldn't be further from the truth. Crazy to me. Anyway, so let's say the holiday is only 6 years away. So there isn't much time for the market to recover if it wobbles right before you need to book that holiday. That money goes somewhere calmer. It's still over that 5% threshold, but into one of the more balanced funds. So the 60 or 40% equity funds, or even more bonds than that. So you've got enough growth to stay ahead of inflation, which starts to bite at those periods of time, without betting the whole trip on just one good year or losing the lot 6 months before you need to take it out, which is what a lot of people do in the stock market. Anyway, I digress. Your retirement money, completely different question, right? 20 years out. Volatility, losing your money 6 months before you need to press the book button for the holiday, that isn't your enemy here. It is your fuel. The pot that you need for your retirement, it needs a bit of volatility. That pot goes into something like 100% equities, 100% shares, wrapped inside your pension. So the tax man's already handed you that free uplift on the way in, and then you just completely leave it alone and let the 2 decades that you have do the heavy lifting. Now, I would hope that if you're in a position where you're earning a lot more than what you were in your 20s, maybe so much money that you're actually thinking to yourself that your 20-year-old self would be shocked. Well, I have found that over my career, there is a pretty, I'm going to say, fatal mistake that people make in that spot when they become a high earner. And I cover it in this video here next. It's something that if you really want to make the best of your current income and not waste your equivalent of the 20s again, you're going to want to give it a click. So I will see you